the universe is always going to be sending you whispers. But if you don't pay attention to the whispers, it'll send a tsunami. And I didn't realize that every time that I was ignoring the pain in my stomach, the tiredness from walking up the stairs, the complete exhaustion, the needing to lie down in the middle of the day when that was never something I had done before, every time I was taking one of these individual symptoms and wiping them away to zero on my scoreboard, that was me ignoring the whispers. You're listening to Heartbreak Alchemy with Alaska Wolf. So if you've been in my world for a while, you've probably heard my story. The story of this heartbreak that came along into my life and shattered my world. And how actually there was a lot happening in my world at that moment when that heartbreak came and hit. It was just like the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, because I was in this place in my life where there was just so much chaos. Wow. Like so much chaos. It was the middle of COVID. My mom had died maybe about a year previously. So I was still in this stage of really being shell-shocked. I can't even say that I was grieving, because I think I was still shell-shocked from that happening because it was so out of the blue. My toxic relationship had been devolving since the very beginning, but ultimately for the last year it had been in a death spiral down towards the bottom of the ocean. My careers disappeared overnight because of COVID. Like the DJ scene completely shut down overnight. My interior design projects shut down. Everything was closed. Everything was very, very fucking quiet. And it was also around this time that I was going through some incredible health challenges in my life. Like I was having all sorts of stuff happening inside of my body that I just couldn't explain. I was having a lot of stomach issues. I was constantly feeling like I had acid reflux. And so for the first time since I had lived in Berlin, I actually went to a doctor. And I remember I had to go to this like random walk-in clinic that just allowed you to walk in off the street, because in Berlin you have to have a certain doctor that you go to and you have to sign up with them, and it's a whole process. And I hadn't done any of that. That was how little I was tapped into what was happening inside of my body. That was how little I was paying attention to my health or worried about my health, you know? Like I didn't have a doctor. I never got checkups. I just made do. If I had pain, I would take ibuprofen. If I had something wrong, I might call my dad. My dad is also a doctor, a pediatrician. So I would get advice from him from time to time, but I was in no way like connected into my body or connected into my health. And so I remember going to this walk-in clinic, and it felt like as immediately as I sat down in the chair, like the entire symptoms that I had been feeling for the last weeks and months just completely evaporated. And so I started to get this real intense feeling of like imposter syndrome when I was sitting in that chair describing to the doctor my symptoms that I could barely even connect to because they weren't present in this super intense way as they had been for the last number of weeks. And so I just immediately felt like I was lying. I felt like I was just like this faker, you know, like this imposter syndrome that just immediately washed over me. And so I remember describing to her my symptoms and her not being that concerned. I think this is a lot of the times the reaction you get from doctors. They're just like, they've heard it all before and nothing really phases them. So I actually took a lot of solace in that and was thinking, okay, I'm fine. She gave me some medicine. I took some medicine. I made some changes to my diet and I thought I'm good. And so I continued on with my life. And I would still have stomach problems from now and then. You know, this kind of queasy feeling, this kind of sick feeling, this feeling of being off my food. And I remember I also started to have a lot of tiredness, like a lot of tiredness. And like, I'm not a super active person, or I wasn't at that time. Like I would walk my dog, but you know, I was not somebody that was like extending themselves so much that I should be like so tired. But like the type of tiredness that I'm talking about is like I would walk up the flight of stairs, 2 flights of stairs from the ground floor of my house to my apartment. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I would literally need to lie down on my kitchen floor for like 10 minutes just to get my breath back. to stop the dizziness that was happening inside of my head. I just like really was so bone tired. And for the first time in my life, I started needing to start to nap in the middle of the afternoon. And I was not a nap person, like not at all. There was like something so alpha inside of me, so like type A inside of me, that I was just like, no, I work all day. I don't nap. I can't lie down. Don't be ridiculous. You know, I really had this very strict protocol for myself about what was okay for me and what was not okay for me. And I remember that this just went on for so long. Like the actual difference between the first time I went to that doctor, the walk-in clinic, to this point that I had gotten to was probably, it must have been 6 months. It could have been longer. Like in that period, I had actually even sourced my own doctor, a doctor that I could go to regularly, because actually the problems were becoming worse and worse, and I was having different problems, and I was needing to go to the doctor more and more often. And so it was just this situation that kept on getting worse, and I kept on ignoring the getting worse part of it. And in this period of time, there was just so many different flashpoints that should have been like a giant knock on the proverbial door for me. But there's this old saying, and it says something like, the universe is always going to be sending you whispers. But if you don't pay attention to the whispers, it'll send a tsunami. And I didn't realize that every time that I was ignoring the pain in my stomach, the tiredness from walking up the stairs, the complete exhaustion, the needing to lie down in the middle of the day when that was never something I had done before, every time I was taking one of these individual symptoms and wiping them away to zero on my scoreboard, that was me ignoring the whispers. And so I continued on with my life. I kept playing shows. I was a DJ at the time and playing all these shows. And there was one in particular where I really remember it so vividly, because I had gone out to this venue and I had been playing, I think I was playing like the main slot. So that meant that I was kind of watching a couple of DJs before me, and I was, you know, it was Berlin. So you're probably playing at like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. if you're playing the main slot, right? So I remember going out and waiting around, watching the other DJs and just really feeling off. And this was more than like nerves in my stomach or excitement in my stomach. This was like pain in my stomach, like literal wrenching pain, where I could just feel this gnawing ache in my stomach and just being like, okay, well, I have this gig. I can't leave. I'm here now. I'm the main slot. It's advertised. Like there's nothing I can do except play the show. So, you know, for those hours while I was waiting for my slot to come up, I just kind of dealt with it. And I was like, okay, I'm not feeling well, but I'm going to play this show and then I'm going to go home. But like, wow, I feel like shit. Like I feel bad. And so it came to the time for me to play my set, and I played my set, and oh my God, I played such a fucking incredible set, like so much energy, so much vibe. Like I could turn it on when I needed to, you know, for better or for worse, I could turn it on. And so I played this incredible show, and I remember playing the last song, and I remember literally as the audience were clapping for me, I remember literally like putting my hands up in the air and then literally like collapsing behind the decks. Like collapsing onto the ground and just being like, oh my fucking God, I literally need to lay down. I think I'm going to die. I think I'm going to die. And just lying there on the floor behind the decks in this nightclub listening to this music and just being like, oh my God, I'm so fucking tired. I'm so fucked. My stomach is so fucked. Like, what the fuck is going on? And you know, you would think in that moment that the thing that you would do is be like, okay, this has been a crazy night. Like, I feel completely horrible. I have just played a show. I've just gotten paid. Like, just get a cab, get directly from door to door, and literally just like be home immediately. But what did I do? Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, it's okay. Like, Jesus, stop being so dramatic. just get your stuff together and go, say goodbye to everybody, get over to the train station and just get the train home. Oh my God, like stop being such a baby. And so I walked myself out of that club and I walked over to the train station and I waited for the train. My stomach was so painful. And I remember talking to my ex-partner and just being like, yeah, my stomach is really sore, but I'm just going to get the train home. And I don't know what it was in that moment. Like there was some sort of resistance that was so alive in me. And, you know, when I thought about it at first, I thought maybe it was like that I wasn't so practiced in giving myself things that I had deemed as frivolous, you know, like, you know, getting a taxi I really saw as kind of frivolous, so I wouldn't do it. But I think really on reflection now, it was about something so much deeper, and it was about this care, the level of care that I would give to myself. Because there was a really strong voice inside of me that said, like, don't take up too much space, don't need too much, don't require too much. Like, that's going to be dangerous if you need things and require things and are too needy. People won't like that. And so the first person that didn't like that was me. My own internal narrative was like, don't need too much. Don't take up too much space. Don't take care of yourself in this way. Like that's too much. And I really think that this was a very deep part of my programming that existed and that I found so many places in my life. But I just remember that night, like getting the train home and even having to walk from the train station to my house and just being like, what the fuck? Like it must have taken me an hour and a half to get home that night after playing this show and literally being crippled behind the DJ booth and just like, wow, the disconnection from myself was so real. And so it was shortly after this night that I remember going back to my now doctor that I had. And I actually remember being there that day because I had a UTI that was a recurrent UTI, like something that I literally had antibiotics on standby for whenever I would get a UTI because I was getting them so often. And I know if you know anything about like how your body can manifest certain things in terms of like the partner that you have and the kind of relationship that's going on, like UTIs are not a great sign for a relationship. But I didn't know that at the time. I just thought like, oh, well, it is what it is, you know. I must not have gone to the bathroom quick enough after sex or something like that. And, you know, I explained it away. So I was at the doctor that day and I was there because of this UTI. And, you know, on my way out the door, I said to my doctor, I was like, you know, also, I've been getting really tired these days. You know, I've had to walk up 2 flights of stairs and I have to lie down on the floor. And like also at this time, the progression of my stomach problems had begun to manifest in vomiting, like random projectile vomiting. Like I would be out walking my dog in the afternoon at around 4:00 and I would just be like projectile vomiting in bushes. Like literally. And I just kind of was like, I mentioned these things in passing with literally my hand on the doorknob, you know? And she was like, oh, okay, that actually sounds like there might be something going on. Let's do some blood tests. And so I was like, okay, whatever. I have insurance. No harm. Let's do some blood tests. And so we did some blood tests and I walked out the door and I didn't really think about it again. Thought like, okay, great. I have my UTI medication. This is great. And didn't think anything more of it. Until around 8:00 that night when my phone rang with a number that I didn't recognize. And so I picked it up. I think it might have been a different time because who answers the phone when you don't know the number? But regardless, I picked it up. And it was my doctor. And she just was like, you need to go to the emergency room right now. Like, you need to go right fucking now because you're bleeding out. You are bleeding out. Like, your blood tests are back and like things are not good. The levels that you have in your body, they're not good. Like you are bleeding internally, basically, is what she was saying to me. What she meant by bleeding out was like that there was something inside of me that was ruptured and that she was afraid that I was going to lose so much blood internally that I wasn't aware that I was losing. that I was going to die. And it's kind of emotional, like thinking about that moment, because my reaction in that moment was, I think she's overreacting. I think she, the doctor, is overreacting. And so I remember calling my sister, or maybe I even called my dad and was like, I think I don't need to go to the doctor. I think it's fine. Like, I think I'll go tomorrow. Like, it's 8:00 at night. Who's going to take care of my dog? Like, what am I going to do? And I remember just not going anywhere. I remember just being like, it's a little too much. Like, I don't need to go to the ER. Like, come on, that's crazy. That's for people that are really sick, you know? That imposter syndrome coming up again. Like, oh, I couldn't be bleeding internally. I'm not really sick. Like, I don't need to take up that space. Like, and so I didn't do anything. I stayed on my couch and I kind of was like, whatever, I think texting my dad or my sister or whatever. I don't know what I was doing, but I know I didn't move. And so she called me back an hour later and she was like, nobody from the hospital has confirmed that you've arrived. Have you gone to the hospital yet? And I was like, no, I thought I wasn't going to, I thought maybe I'd go in the morning. And she was like, you need to go immediately now. Like, you could die. And so I went. I called a friend of mine and I got her to come over, and she came with me down to the hospital, down to the ER. I gave her the key to my apartment so she could look in on Sita if I needed to stay overnight or something. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was pretty stressful. It was a little scary. And so we went to the ER together. And I remember being in the waiting room and, like, you know, this was in Germany. So in Germany, they are not, I'm going to be honest with you, they are not super flexible. If you don't speak German, they don't want to know. You know what I mean? So I remember doing this intake form and sitting there alone because obviously my friend couldn't come in anywhere past the exact waiting room. They're very specific about that. And so I remember filling out this form and, like, trying to do it while just, like, super scared, super all over the place, just, like, not really knowing what was going to happen next, and just, like, trying to fill out this form in German with Google Translate, and, like, oh my God, like, what the fuck? Whew. And I remember going back and sitting with my friend and starting to feel bad that she was there, you know, like, oh my God, like, you don't need to stay with me. I'm sure it's going to be fine. Like, whatever, it might be ages. And, like, you know, I told her that she should go home, and I think eventually she did go home, and then I eventually got called in to go onto one of the gurneys in the hallway, and they came over and they started putting taking more blood, so putting a needle in my arm and taking some blood. And just, I remember looking down at myself on this hospital bed, and, like, I just remember, like, wearing these sneakers and these yoga pants and just being like, what the fuck is going on with this little, like, hospital bracelet on my arm? And just, I remember taking pictures for Instagram and being like, this is wild. Like, what the fuck is going on, you know? And yeah, they took some blood, and I'm not too sure how they figured out whatever they figured out, but they were like, you're bleeding internally, and we think you have a stomach ulcer that's ruptured. We think it's bleeding. And I just thought, like, oh, bleeding stomach ulcer. Like, I thought basically what had happened was that there was a hole in my stomach somewhere and I was bleeding out of it, and that was the problem. But actually, what I've learned and understood since then is that it basically goes in stages. Like, you have stress, you have stomach upset that comes from that stress, you have aggravated stomach upset that comes from stress, and then you start to get ulcers. And ulcers are where things start to get pretty serious. And you have a whole range of ulcers that you can have, and it takes a long fucking time before you get to bleeding ulcer. Because bleeding ulcer is like all the way down the path of, you've ignored this, you've pretended it wasn't happening, you have just continued to paper over the cracks, you have just not ever paid attention to this at all. And that's where I was, sitting in that hospital bed that day. They were like, you have a bleeding stomach ulcer. And I just think back and I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on? And so they admitted me. They were like, you have lost a significant amount of blood. and it's been going on for a really long time, and you need to be admitted to the hospital. And so I was admitted that night, and I stayed in hospital for a week of tests and scopes and pokes and prods, and I had a blood transfusion because I had lost so much blood. And I just remember being in that room that week and just feeling like this is so fucking surreal. Like it almost kind of felt like a joke, you know? It kind of felt like a joke. And I, in retrospect, really realized that this moment was the tsunami that the universe was sending me. Like this was one big pillar of the tsunami, and the tsunami was obviously like this greater thing that was all of the things combined. But this health pillar was so pivotal for me because I had spent a lifetime completely disconnected from my body. Completely disconnected from my body. And when I say my body, I mean like all aspects. Like I mean, I didn't pay attention to how my body felt. I didn't pay attention to my emotions. I pushed everything down. I would explain away stress. I would explain away all the ways in which things were manifesting in my body to tell me something, to point out something to me in my life. And I was just like, I could push it all down. My sister always used to say that if you see Alaska crying, you know things have gone to shit because you would never see me sweat. I could bottle that shit like wine. I don't know. Like I could just bottle it. And it would come out in these oblique ways. But I was just somebody that really was so disconnected from my body. I have a real history of that in my life. You know, when I was younger, I had an eating disorder, and that was a really great way to be in like ultimate control for me. And I recognized that actually I had that same patterning, that same control patterning that I was exerting over my body inside of my eating disorder. It existed in a lot of other places in my life, but I just didn't recognize it because it wasn't as obvious a pattern, you know? And this was really the first moment I started to recognize like, oh, fuck. I am super disconnected from my body. And it was interesting because it was almost so obvious. It was so obvious because in so many places in my life, I was disconnected from my body. And I mean, like, even inside of my relationship, one very obvious place where I was super disconnected was inside of my sex life. You know, like I had spent a long time inside of that relationship having sex where I didn't really feel anything. And so I would perform my orgasm and I would pretend I was having a good time, and I would just like put on the act of this really sexual, sensual girlfriend. But it was for my partner's benefit because I couldn't feel anything. I was very numb in my body. I had spent so much time in my life learning to grip and control and force and ignore and shapeshift and just like contort, that the reality of my body, the real sensations, the real emotions, the real numbness, the real anything was a very big inconvenience to me in the way that I wanted to portray myself. And so I would do anything I could to push it all down and to push it all away. And I would love to tell you that I got out of hospital and I took this as like the divine intervention that it was, and I broke up with my partner and I connected the dots and saw the links, and I understood that it was the stress of this relationship that was so misaligned that was causing my body to collapse in on itself in this very obvious way. But it wasn't. I got out of that hospital bed and I remember going straight back into that relationship and thinking nothing of it. Like I did not connect the dots at that time. I had no idea that the two things were related. Or I didn't want to see that the two things were related is probably a better way of saying that. Because, you know, the mind has a very different desire than the body. Like, my mind had a very specific story that it wanted to believe, basically about me, about the relationship, about my partner. It had a very specific outcome that it wanted to achieve, which was, I want to be in this relationship. I want to be, quote unquote, in love with this person. I want to be chosen by this person. I can't give it up now. We've gone through so much. What will I do if I'm alone? Like, all of these narratives were coming from my mind. And so my mind was very specifically not allowing me to connect with the very obvious truths that my body was trying to communicate to me, right? And so I continued on in that relationship for probably another year or so before everything started to collapse in around us. So, the culmination of all of the things happening was during COVID, and the build up, this health issue and these health scares were in the kind of like preceding time to COVID. And so I hadn't connected them. And it took the rest of my life collapsing in around me. It took the breakdown of that relationship. It took my ex-partner walking out the door and never coming back. It took the disappearance of my jobs and my mom and my life and COVID and everything collapsing down on top of us to finally be the stop point, the end point where something finally fucking shifted. Because up until that point, I could explain away anything and everything, and I did very, very well. And so in the aftermath of that breakup, something shifted for me. And I guess it was down to the fact that it was just so goddamn quiet in my world. Like, everything had disappeared. Quite literally everything. Like, my partner had left the home that we had shared. My mom was gone. My jobs were gone. My social circle, as small as it was gone. You couldn't really leave the house. Like, it was a very quiet moment in the world where I think so many people had to learn how to realign themselves to a different way of being. But going through a heartbreak during that time compounded this struggle. For the first 6 months of that time, I really remember like trying so desperately to still find the answers. Like, the answers, I was looking at anxious attachment and avoidant attachment and like, what was going on and what was our CPTSD that we had. And like, I was really going deep. And then I realized like, this is still me in the same pattern, because it's me wanting to understand what's the matter with me and what's the matter with him. And how can I basically how can I micromanage all of our healing, his as well, in order so that we could get back together, because I was still not really willing to let go of that relationship in some ways. I really, on some level, thought like, we'll get back together. We've always gotten back together. We've broken up 1,000 times. And it just became clearer day after day as that breakup went on that we were not actually going to get back together. And so if that was the case, I started to wonder what the fuck I was going to do, because I knew in the deepest levels of my soul that I could never go through this again. Like, not this kind of relationship, not this bad, not with all the things that happened, my sickness and like the things that had gone on in that relationship, but also some of the more core elements of that relationship that were so amplified in that relationship, that I had seen in previous relationships that I had. There was some level of me that looks back and thinks like, that last relationship was really like the culmination of many different relationships that were challenging on some level. But it was just the most amplified version of it. And things got so loud and so bad because on some level, I knew I was ready to look at these things that I was struggling with, and I was ready to alchemize them. I was ready to never go through them again. And so the universe was sending me my tsunami. It was sending me a relationship that was undeniably terrible. Terrible and beautiful. I don't disregard the entire relationship. We had beautiful moments, but the lows were so low because I needed it to be that bad in order to finally look around and start asking the questions that I needed to actually ask. Like, why do you abandon yourself all the time? Why are you so willing to let go of what you want and need and allow the other person to get what they want and need? Why do you choose people where you have to shrink and settle and tolerate things that are quite intolerable to you because of the values you hold, the needs you have, the desires you want? Why do you choose those people? Why are you so willing to shapeshift and people please and become who you think other people want? Why are you always the strong one? Why are you always over-functioning and over-giving? Why don't you feel like you can ask for what you want and need? You know? And those were just some of the many, many questions that I had to ask myself in the aftermath of that relationship. And there was this other part to it as well. And I'm not really too sure where this awareness came from, but when that relationship ended, I knew that there was something really important that was happening around the pattern that I found in my sexuality of faking my orgasm. I knew that there was healing that I needed to do inside of myself, and honestly now seeing it like with a bigger picture, like in my lineage, that really needed to be done inside of my sexuality. You know, there was pain and there was trauma that existed there that was manifesting in the patterns that I found inside of my sexuality that came up so potently, you know? Because what is it that you're doing inside of sex if you're performing your orgasm and pretending you feel things you don't feel and putting other people's pleasure above your own and really just like being whoever they want you to be? Like, what is that but the ultimate form of self-abandonment, you know? What is it but that? And so I just knew I had this draw that knew that the healing that I was going to be called to do after that relationship was not going to be a cerebral kind of healing. It was really going to be a healing that needed to be so holistic. Like, it needed to happen on so many levels. Like, I knew that my body was going to be this integral, important part of my healing. I knew that healing within my sexuality was also going to be this really integral part of this healing. And of course, there was the healing that needed to happen in my emotions and my patterns and my subconscious mind, which was constantly on this like search for ultimate safety and never could really find it. And so it always found these familiar hells. But I just knew, I could feel it deep in my bones that like the healing I needed to do was at the level of like emotion and feeling and body and somatics and conscious and subconscious and lineage and spiritual. And it was just this complete realignment of who I actually was. This complete realignment to who I actually was. There was so much about this moment in my life that was just about like, oh my God, I need to completely start over because I don't know who I am anymore. And so that healing was very intimidating. It was intimidating to think about all of the ways in which my own personal struggles were just manifesting in every aspect of my life. Like, my relationships for sure were like a very hot button example of where I was struggling in my life, but I saw reflections of it really most places. I saw it in the friendships that I was choosing with people that were not super reciprocal. I saw it in the glass ceilings I would find myself directly under inside of my career, where I would be trying really hard and hustling really hard and still just really feeling like I couldn't get to that next level that I really wanted to get to. I found it inside of the way that I would just give up the things that I was interested in because I was so focused on this relationship that I was having. I just found it so many places. My relationship with my family, just like everywhere. The same struggles of inauthenticity and lack of valuing myself, not feeling worthy, constantly feeling like scarce, constantly feeling anxious and worried and not good enough. And, I really needed to completely realign myself. And so I knew that was going to be some big healing. And I knew it wasn't healing that I could do by myself, because I was very aware, like, at this point in my life, I had been in therapy for many years, working with the forest fires that were happening in front of me at all times, just being like, oh my God, this happened inside of my relationship, crazy, but never actually getting to the deeper things, not getting to the lack of worth that I was struggling with, not getting to the, patterns that I was finding inside of my sex life. It was always just like, oh no, there's this crazy thing happening. And so at this time, I remember listening to a lot of podcasts, and they were all centered around love and sex and relationships and healing and possibility, like the life that could be available to me on the other side. And something that I saw and heard over and over was like the importance of the body, the importance of the nervous system, the importance of working at a level that is so much deeper than just the conscious mind, which was where therapy was touching. And there's such a split between the body and the mind when it comes to healing. Because this world would have you believe that everything that we're doing is coming from our mind. Like we are in control and we go from A to B, and it's all very linear and it's all very like masculine, and this is the thing and this is the other thing, and you just go and work backwards from here. But the truth is, so much of what's happening in our life is not coming from our like conscious choices, or else we would have perfect lives. We would have amazing lives, because we're like, oh, I choose to be a millionaire. I choose to have an incredible partner. I choose to feel safe. I choose. But the truth is, so many of the decisions that we're making in our lives are coming because of our nervous system, our body, what it feels, where it feels resonance, what the truth is that's happening inside of your body in any given situation. Because your nervous system is your body's like communication channel, right? And so it's always responding to everything that it sees around it, that it feels around it. And so like if you have somebody standing in front of you and they are super unreliable and they're super unsafe feeling, if they are somebody that comes and goes out of your life, if they never do the things they say they're going to do, but if you're really used to that, if that's the like setup that your body is used to from an inconsistent parent, or the way that you were raised in a house where you had to move around a lot, or whatever it is, your body experiences all of that uncertainty as home, as familiarity. It codes it as safety, right? So with your mind, you would never look at this person and think, oh, this person is safe. But your body is like, safe, familiar. I know this pain. I know how to deal with this pain. This pain is familiar to me, therefore he's safe. And that's where it gets tricky, right? Because with your mind, you would know that this person is not safe, but your body is making the choice. You're like, I'm attracted to him. And so you have to work with these systems inside of your body, the nervous system, your subconscious, all of the conditioning that you've had, all of the fears that you've been holding, all of those beliefs you've been told to hold in your life. Because true transformation, not just from like really bad life to kind of okay life, it's like from really bad life to really incredible life, really requires like such intense transformation. You really need to reprogram the subconscious to teach it safety, to reteach it love, to teach it new rules and beliefs and identities that it can hold. You need to work with the body so that you can move from holding a body that's full of fear and anxiety and stress and just like feeling comfortable at that baseline, to a body that can actually open to pleasure or openness or abundance, or like feeling true safety and true love in your life. And this is why so much of the work that I do with clients is like at these very different levels inside of their somatic reality, inside of their subconscious reality, inside of their conscious reality as well. But working also at the level of their family, at the level of their conditioning, at the level of their expression in the world. Like, what are the things that are impacted by the way that you actually feel inside of your body? Like if you're walking into a room full of strangers and you're going to a dinner party, but you're going alone, right? And if you feel like, oh my God, I feel this contraction in my stomach, I'm so stressed out, I'm so anxious, your mind is going 100 miles an hour, your body starts to feel a little sick, like you start to contort yourself, you start to become smaller, you start to shrink, like literally physically, you put your shoulders down, you put your head down, you're trying not to be noticed. Because what is your body looking for? Safety. Safety. Like your subconscious just wants you to be safe. And the way that your subconscious gets you safety is by making you invisible, by shrinking you, by making you small, like physically small. But if you've done the work to actually reprogram your body to understand that walking into a room, loving yourself, feeling goddamn worthy as fuck, you walk in and you take up that space. You are comfortable in your body. You can feel that tingle of anxiety that might exist inside of your solar plexus, those bubbles raising, and be like, okay, it's just a sensation and I'm okay. I'm safe. I can hold myself. And then all of a sudden you're walking through the room and it's a completely different fucking experience, you know? Like no longer your shoulders clenched and small, like you're looking up, you're looking around, you're making eye contact. It's completely different. This is why like working with the body is working with every level. It's being seen, it's your expression. It's so multi-layered because it all exists on such a physical reality level. And you know, when I started doing this work and when I continued to do this work, my whole life started fucking shifting. Like, whoa, holy shit. And at the time it felt incremental, you know, at the time I didn't feel like boom, win, because it was a long process, you know, like it took dedication, because the subconscious thoughts that you hold, the systems that are held inside of your body, they are literally like programmed into your DNA. And that is like millennia after however many generations. And now it's you. And so our like primal brain, our like lizard brain is only scanning for safety ever, right? And so it's like unhooking from those things takes time. That's why it's like this quick fix world that we live in. It's so detrimental because you're literally working against decades, millennia of stored memory, of fear and like running from a bear type energy. And then we watch one Instagram video and we go to one workshop and we're wondering like, why aren't I healed yet? You know? But these things that we experience inside of our body, they're persistent because they're very old. But ultimately doing this work really set me free in my life. Because up until that moment, I had been living in Berlin, getting more and more tired of this city that I was living in, that I found dirty and unsafe and just like unfriendly, honestly. I felt like people, and myself included, were very disconnected. Like I could tell a million stories. I won't go into a tangent here, but like I could tell you a million stories where I needed help with something and I couldn't get the help I needed from people directly in front of me. And it was a real like, whoa, it was very intense for my nervous system to experience those things. And so I started making changes, you know, bit by bit, as I became like a woman that trusted herself more, that could connect to her body, that could actually like stand up for my needs and wants and identify what those things are, and to like work with my pleasure and work with my body and work with my sexuality and sensuality and free myself from all of these ways of thinking that I had been thinking for so long, all of these ways where I would shrink myself and tolerate and settle and shapeshift and contort. And like, I started to learn how to not do that. How to not believe that I had to do that. How to not do that automatically with my body. And my life started shifting incredibly. Like I left Berlin, which I really had no plans to do, but it just got to the point where the city was so overwhelming for my nervous system in a way that I hadn't experienced up until then because I was so numbed out. But the more open I became, the more I became willing to feel my sensations, my emotions, and exist inside what was true for me, I realized I needed to leave, and so I left. And I packed up my car and I moved 2,000 miles and drove with my cat and my dog and moved to Ireland to live beside the ocean. And then shortly after that, or not so shortly after that, I decided to move again to Thailand, a reality that I did not even imagine was ever freaking possible, because it's kind of complicated to move here, honestly. And I just created the ability for myself to do that. And I retrained. I left my work as a DJ and as an interior designer behind, and I retrained and I became a sex, love, and relationship coach. And now I work every day with women, and it's literally one of the most creative, beautiful jobs ever. And I feel like I'm actually making a fucking difference in the world. It's so incredible. I work with animals, rescuing animals, which has always been a really incredible passion of mine, and it's part of my mission here in the world. I completely rewired the way my body feels. So I'm able to connect into relationships in a different way, to sex in a different way, to love in a different way, because I'm no longer constantly feeling like I immediately needed to brace for impact. I can have beautiful, loving, open, vulnerable relationships with people, and that's something that I'm able to do now. Like, my whole world has changed. And the same is true of my clients. You know, I've seen people move across the world, make more money, change jobs, like go into new relationships, start a relationship with a woman, go back into a relationship with a man, like all sorts of things. But because they are tapped into their body, they're having incredibly different experiences. They're setting up charities. They are just becoming new people that feel deeply fulfilled, deeply worthy, deeply connected to themselves. And this is the deepest thing. It's like so much of what we do in our lives, we're doing because other people have told us we should, or it's the way that it's supposed to be done, or like we're trying to fulfill somebody else's idea of what makes us a good person, a worthy person, a lovable person. And so we live lives quietly miserable because actually we don't know what the fuck we want, or we have been suppressing what we want for so long that we're just really practiced in not getting what we want and not saying what we want and not choosing the life we want. And so many of the women, when they first come to me, they're like, you know, I've created success in my world. Like, I have a life that looks pretty perfect on the outside, but I feel fucking empty. And my relationships are falling apart. My relationships are like this flashpoint where I'm constantly finding strife. And there's patterns repeating, and I just don't feel fulfilled in my world. Like, I know there's got to be more, you know? Like, I don't want a life that just looks good on paper. I want a life that fucking feels good. And that's the buy-in. That's the moment where you're like, I can't do this anymore. I can't fucking repeat this cycle anymore. Because it's too costly. Like, at the end of the day, it's costing me my fucking life. And that can feel like a scary moment, but it's also when you step to the edge of the cliff, when you finally say, I can't do this anymore, you actually become the most free you ever have been. Because it's the moment where you step to the edge and you say, I'm not going to fucking do this again, which means I'm now willing to do whatever it takes to change this pattern, to change this loop that I'm in. And it's the most free you'll ever be. And so if you've been listening to this whole podcast and you've been feeling this resonance, if you have been listening to my words and feeling in your body like, fuck, she might be right, you know. Like, maybe there is something in the body. Maybe there is something that's so much deeper than what I can actually comprehend with my mind, that's ready to be unlocked. And that is why this heartbreak has been given to you. Not as a punishment, but as a portal for you to get to the next level, the next stage of your life, the next evolution of who you're actually supposed to be. Then I would love to invite you to an incredible experience that I'm throwing next week called Pleasure Matrix. Because Pleasure Matrix is all about really harnessing the portal from heartbreak where you are right now to the most fully worthy, the most effortlessly aligned, the most unapologetically, audaciously authentic version of you, but also of your life. It's about becoming the match for the life that you actually want. Because in the past, you have become the version of yourself that you knew how to become. You shrank and you minimized and you made yourself smaller. You contracted, you people pleased. You became the version of yourself that you thought would get you love based on the rules that you had been explained in your life. They were setting you up for a life that was small and safe and protected in what your mind thought protection would be, but actually all it gave you was a life that never truly felt like it was meant for you because it wasn't. Because of the conditioning, because of the fear, because of all of the generational stuff that had been happened and passed down through the body that you have been holding your entire life, which has meant you have made certain choices, you held certain beliefs, you hold a certain identity. But actually what I'm telling you now, what your body is telling you now, what this heartbreak is here to tell you now, is that actually this is the unlock code for the next version of you. This heartbreak is here to be the thing that catapults you, that elevates you to a new stratosphere, to actually having the life that truly, finally feels fulfilling, feels aligned. And I've had clients that have come to work with me, and by the time we get to the end of our time together, they are like, oh my fucking God. I thought what I wanted was one thing, but actually now I realize that I was so blinkered in my thinking that actually what I want my life to look like is this completely other thing. And I'm in a position now to see that I'm worthy of that this is the standard I hold, that this is the boundary I hold, that this is the version of self that I am aligning to. This is how the work we do changes your life, because you align to become the version of yourself that effortlessly attracts the life that you want, because it's finally in resonance. And don't get me wrong when I say effortlessly, because it's not without effort on your part. There is so much deep, challenging work that needs to be done in order to let go of all of the resistance you hold to being this incredible version of yourself. And that's why inside of Pleasure Matrix, what we're going to do in this one-time experience is literally unlock that version of what you want yourself and your life to look like. I'm going to give you tools and rituals that allow you to tap into that version of yourself now, that allow you to release the resistance that you hold unconsciously, subconsciously in your body, in your somatic experience, in your lineage. Like you hold resistance to being the bright, shiny, beautiful, worthy, like deserving, secure version of yourself, because you were taught that's not safe. You were taught the beautiful woman is a bitch. You were taught that a man only chooses you if you're less than him. You were taught that you can't have it all. You can't be a mom and also have a career. You can't be in love and also like be a feminine woman and also like have a business that thrives. You were taught all sorts of things that are just simply not true. These are the rules of life that people in your past believed would keep you safe. But now it's time to actually step into, to learn how to embody this future self, where you feel confident and worthy and authentic, so that you can step into the most expansive reality, because that reality is a match for the identity that you finally hold, this like future self. And the way that we're going to do that is by actually harnessing the body, by harnessing emotion and sensation and pleasure. Because at the end of the day, we can do all of the transformation in the world, but unless it actually taps into a feeling where you feel good, it is difficult to want to continually come back to it. And so that's why this work that I do with women is so sustainable, because you're tapping into something that you want anyway, which is pleasure. But pleasure is also one of the most powerful energies in the world, because it's you saying to yourself over and over and over, I deserve this, I am worthy, I feel good in my body. This is what my reality gets to feel like. This is who I get to be. I am a woman that feels pleasure. I am a woman that is connected to my body. I'm connected to my femininity. I'm connected to what I want. And that's how you step into the version of yourself who already can have or has on another timeline the life, the love, the relationships, the sex, the abundance, the wealth, the joy, the fulfillment, the mission. It's like everything is on the other side of this. And so if you have been waiting to get a taste of my work, this is going to be the most expansive, exquisite, powerful experience. And I can't wait to see all of the women that are going to experience this and just have that anchored somatic knowledge landed in their body that they can have whatever the fuck they want in this lifetime. Everything becomes possible on the other side of this work. And I literally, like every single day when I get up in the morning and I drive my dog to the beach where we go for a walk in the sunrise, and it's so beautiful and there's palm trees and the light is just like peeking over the mountains, I literally could cry. I could cry right now even just like describing it to you, because I can't tell you how grateful I am for the life that I have created on the other side of this heartbreak. I think back to that girl in that hospital bed, willing her boyfriend to call her, to care, to give a shit that she was in the hospital, going out of that hospital and walking straight back into that relationship, even though it was so obvious that it was not the right relationship for me. Fighting for years to try and convince somebody to love me. All so that I could stay in a city that I didn't want to be in, doing work that just gave me this existential dread of, am I hot enough? Am I good enough? Am I cool enough? Will they choose me? Like all the same patterns, FYI, that I found in my career, that I was finding in my relationship. I think of her. I think of how willingly she would have settled for that life, not knowing that everything she was trying to avoid by avoiding that heartbreak was going to be the exact fucking light speed portal to a life so fucking beautiful, so romantic, so epic, so nature-filled, so love-filled, so pleasure-filled. I couldn't have even imagined it back then. And there were so many times in this journey where I thought, that's not possible. And then it became possible, and I couldn't even fucking tell you how. But I put it down to the work that I've done to get so deep into my body and to continue evolving every single day into more and more and more the version of myself that can have anything I want in this world. And that's what I want for you as well. I want you to be able to tap into that power, that skill, that tool, that resource at any moment. Because where you are right now, you can't even dream where you can be after doing this work. So, I'm going to leave things here. I am so fucking excited to guide you through Pleasure Matrix. Depending on when you're listening to this podcast, it is going to be on October 9th. It is 6 p.m. PST. Oh, you'll have to check I'll put all the details in the show notes, but it's like 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. in the States across the two coasts. The timing is not great for my European girlies, so I'm afraid I'm very sorry for that, but I will be recording it for my European girls. So if you are from Europe and you want to go, please do still sign up, and I will be sending out the recording to you guys for a limited period of time. And yeah, thank you so much for being with me here today. I appreciate every single one of you more than you know. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, if you've gotten value out of this podcast, I would love for you to rate, review, and share this podcast. You can rate it wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, any of the things, and that really helps us get this podcast out to a wider audience, to allow more people to know about us and to hear the message that they don't have to be afraid, because everything's going to be okay. If you can share it on your socials, I would love that so much. Maybe tag me. Let me know what resonated. Let me know what hit. Let me know what's changing in your life because of listening to this podcast and doing this work. I'm so fucking proud of you for being on this mission, on being on this path, because it's not an easy path, but it is a path that gives so much in the end. So have heart. I will see you on the flip side. I would love to see you face to face in person for Pleasure Matrix on the 9th of October. And of course, if you have been wanting to work with me on a deeper level and this podcast has given you that little push over the edge that is telling you that now is the time, I would love to welcome you into Body Oracle, which is going to be beginning on November 17th for the next round. I'm so fucking excited for the women that are going to join. Oh my God, it's going to be so goddamn epic. This program is truly the labor of love of my life, and it just keeps on getting better and better and better and more embodied and more full and more just like full of fucking magic and ritual and just the most epic transformations for women that are going through it, who find their worth, who see who they truly are, who learn to love themselves, who reclaim their expression, their true authentic nature, who actually go through and change their entire fucking lives. They step out of lives that look good on paper and they step into lives that fulfill them so deeply. They have the most beautiful, epic relationships. They up-level their standards. They hold their boundaries. They have the most epic sex. Everything shifts in their lives because they come home to themselves over and over and over and over. Because heartbreak is the mirror in this world. Heartbreak shows you, it reveals to you everything that's standing in the way of you being the version of yourself that is most true, most authentic, and most expansive. And the body, that's the portal. That's the oracle. She already knows every single thing that you are asking. She knows every answer. And so our work is to learn how to move into the body and decode what she is telling us. And that's the work of Body Oracle. It's the most incredible program. I'm so fucking proud of it. And I'm so grateful to it. Because Body Oracle is what gave me my life back. And now it's the path for you so that you can walk down this road, so that you can reclaim yourself so deeply, and so that you can create the most fucking incredible life, the most incredible relationships, sex, career, because you deserve that. You deserve that. Thank you so much for being with me. You've been listening to Heartbreak Alchemy with Alaska Wolf.